Don Marsh is writing fiction, but that's no secret. I'll explain that next on City Corner. I'm Steve Potter, and welcome to City Corner. Well, you know Don Marsh from years as a TV anchor and a radio talk show host. I know him as a former co-worker and a sort of an old friend. Hi, Don.
Hi, Steve. Great to see you. Definitely. Let's put the friendship first. The other stuff is ancient history.
Yeah, actually, I kind of looked up to you, but long before I ever met you, because when I first moved to St. Louis, I've told you this before, I was looking for a job, and you were a St. Louis TV news anchor, and I'd watch you every night and never know that years later I'd actually know you and be sitting down talking to you.
I guess you've been in St. Louis for a long time because that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, and we're here to talk about, you have this new career the last few years of writing fiction, and is it like 3 books in 2 years? Or?
In 18 months. What else does one do during a pandemic?
Yeah.
You can't go out and carouse.
But you mentioned how long you'd been in St. Louis. What year was it?
71.
71. And I think, didn't you start your career in Baltimore? Is that right?
I started my career, Steve, in Orange, New Jersey. I was the managing editor of a small magazine for a year. And then I went overseas where I worked in radio there for 6 years, then Baltimore for 6 years, then St. Louis.
St. Louis, and you've been here ever since.
Yeah.
Of course, you got into radio after TV, right? You didn't do both at the same time ever, did you?
No. No, I started in radio, but then TV, and then the last 15 years or so, until recently, to radio.
Well, you've written 3 fiction books.
Yeah.
Secrets is the one we're here to talk about today because that's just out and it's available at Amazon.
Yeah.
But you wrote 2 fiction books before that, and then you wrote some other books too.
Yeah, some nonfiction books that I wrote, one of them in 2009, the other one a couple of years after that, and the other one a couple of years after that. One was a memoir about some of the places I've been and people I've met, and the other was a spoof of a manners book called How to Be Rude Politely.
Right.
And then the one after that was Coming of Age. The mysteries, if you will, of getting older and trying to find some humor in that.
Yes,
very tough to do.
I laughed and cried when I read that. Because
I cried most of the. I thought it was pretty funny.
So this last 18 months, you're writing fiction now. That's a whole different thing.
It's really neat, Steve, for someone who for more than 50 years spent his life writing fact as a journalist and not having to stray from the facts at all, to keep it as factual as you possibly could. It was really liberating to get to a point where I could make everything up. And that's a lot of fun.
And not get fired.
Right. But it's, as I say, it's liberating. It's powerful. You can make people up, you can make places up, you can make situations up. And if you don't like what you put down, you can erase it and start all over again. You can't do that in journalism.
Yeah. Well, was that easy for you, letting your mind go like that, since you were so programmed to do it the other way? Absolutely.
As I say, I keep using the word liberating. Yeah, I could just do whatever I wanted. And there's a certain freedom there, and I loved it. I enjoyed it. And I write very quickly. I've always had to. And so once I get an idea, I run with it.
Well, this new book, Secrets, a little bit later I'm going to ask you about the other 2 fiction books you wrote, A Wink and a Nod, and The Damned and the Doomed. We'll go over that a little bit later. But this is Secrets. And wait, I wanted to quote something out of your book. In the very beginning, you say, "Man is not what he thinks he is what he hides." Right. What does that mean?
Well, I think exactly what it says. We all have secrets, don't we? I mean, we all have things.
I'm not telling.
See, we all have things that we kind of put in abeyance in the background, and hope that they don't come up. And some of them are good secrets, and some of them are bad secrets. I think we've all got a library of both in us someplace.
Yeah.
And you hope that the bad ones don't jump out some point and embarrass you.
Your main character in this book, Secrets, Gary Fergus.
Fergus. Yeah.
He probably has more secrets than the average guy.
Yeah. Gary Fergus is modeled very, very slightly after, and his situation very slightly after an incident that happened here in St. Louis back in the early 70s. You're probably too young to remember this.
Thank you for that.
When a commercial jetliner was skyjacked in St. Louis.
Yes.
It was out on the airport on the runway for a long time. The skyjacker demanded $500,000, got it, put it in a suitcase, and the plane took off, and he bailed out over Indiana. And unfortunately for him, when he bailed out, the suitcase burst open, and the money flew all over southern Indiana.
Right.
He landed and was in a position, he didn't have the money, he was in the middle of nowhere, and he had to, get away because he knew people would be looking for him. They knew where he bailed out and would be looking for him. That's as far as it goes, except my guy, Gary Fergus, bails out of a plane over New Mexico with $1 million in cash. The money is intact when he lands. He knows he's going to be arrested, so he finds a place to hide the money. When the cops come, they look for it. It was hidden so well, they didn't find it. He had taken a few bills and cast them around, make them think the money was blowing around the desert someplace. It was gone. Anyway, he is arrested. He spends 37 years in prison. And the story begins when he comes back and wants to go for the money to see if he can find it after all that time. And I'll just say that he does. Then the question becomes, did the feds mark it? Did they keep track of the serial numbers? Can he spend it now that he has it? Because if he starts spending it, they're going to come back and arrest him again.
Yeah, he sounds like a character. I wonder who you personally based him on, if anyone in particular, because in your book, one thing you say about him, let me just read this. Something about like if anyone passed him on the street, he'd look like a relic from another era. His hair was funny, and probably mothers clutched their children when he walked by. Tell me about what he looks like.
Well, that's pretty much it. He looks like somebody that you would think of in the late 60s and early 70s. He had long hair. After all, he's been away for all these years.
He's very mature when he gets out of prison, right?
Oh, he's in his 60s.
60s.
Yeah. This happened when he was a very young man. So he kept in reasonably good shape when he was in prison, but he let his hair grow long, and he doesn't dress particularly well, and he is a little resentful that the world has changed so much. During the time he was away. I mean, there are cell phones now, and there are cable television, and there's all sorts of technology that he doesn't understand. And he said, I think one of the lines is that the world has kind of passed him by, and he's trying to figure things out.
But is he a bad person? Some people
No.
not everyone that goes to prison, they may have done bad things, but they're not necessarily bad people in a way. Sometimes prison makes a person a bad person if they go through crazy things there. What's his story?
Well, he's not a bad person. He got into this when he was very young. He was stupid, and he knows it. And, always on the horizon was the fact that this money was out there. He's a good guy. I think that readers will like him and root for him throughout the course of this thing. I modeled his look after Martin McNally, who was the hijacker in that incident in St. Louis that I mentioned,
really?
Whom I met. I covered that story. I was out there all night when the hijacking took place, the skyjack, and he took off, and his trial. And then I had an opportunity to interview him about 2 years ago, for a movie that's being made about this incident. It's a documentary.
Is he a free man?
Oh yeah, he got out about 7, 8 years ago, and he lived in St. Louis for a while. Now he's with his hometown is Detroit. He's living with people up there. But Gary Fergus, my hero, my protagonist, maybe I should say, looks in my mind like McNally looked when I saw him a couple of years ago.
But what kind of vibe did you get from McGalley? Nice guy? Did you like him? Did he seem like a weirdo or what?
No. Yeah, I really liked the guy when I was covering the trial. He was a charming guy. He was a young man. He had a great smile. He was just very, very pleasant in the trial. He didn't seem to harbor any animosity. He was just, seemed like a good guy, a guy that I would like to know. And he was the same guy, 30 plus years later. He did 30 some odd years.
Wow.
And he looked, the long hair, and he was a relic of the past. So yeah, that's my guy. McNally, by the way, the original hijacker. The audience may remember this if they remember the attempt to free 2 prisoners from the prison in Marion, the federal prison in Marion. One, I've forgotten the name of the one guy and Alan Barksher, the helicopter pilot, was hired by a woman to get down there and land in the courtyard of this prison and fly these guys out.
Right.
And the woman was infatuated. Gary Trapnell was the name of the other guy, a sort of a notorious criminal. And anyway, Barklage, now deceased, killed this woman in a struggle in the helicopter before it landed outside the prison. That got a lot of attention.
I remember that.
Yeah. Anyway, none of that is part of the book. It's just the character. Gary Fergus, in my mind, is Martin McNally, and that's the end of it. And the incident of hijacking a plane.
Because you answered a question for me, I was thinking how, here you are, a former broadcaster, news broadcaster, and you come up with this crazy storyline. How'd you make that up? And you just explained it. You didn't really make it up.
Well, that was the trigger. For some reason, I was talking to Danny Wisenkowski of the Riverfront Times months ago because he's involved in a podcast on this incident. And I was a small part of that. And anyway, it's a great story. So I just used the one part of the incident as a trigger to get me into other things.
All right. Well, I've got more questions about your new book, Secrets.
Okay.
So will you hang around and share some secrets when we come back?
I'll share them all, almost all.
Okay. Because that's what makes a secret. You don't tell someone. Well, that's Don Marsh, and we'll be back with more right after this.
The Missouri Botanical Garden is loved by green thumbs and non-gardening types alike because you can play. You can relax. And there's always something new to experience, no matter the time of day or the season. And learn about conservation and one-of-a-kind plants. So come and experience St. Louis.
Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Selfie. Nailed it.
What I love about St. Louis is the 79 unique neighborhoods nestled into 108 city parks, including Forest Park, which is actually larger than Central Park in New York, and of course, the beautiful Tower Grove Park where I'm at now. Oh, the St. Louis Blues. We've got the St. Louis Surge, 2-time WBCBL champions. We've got Harris Stowe, WashU, St. Louis University, and of course, the 11-time World Series champion, St. Louis Cardinals. So come experience St. Louis.
I'm Steve Potter. Welcome back to City Corner. Don Marsh is my guest today, and we're talking about a new book, a book of fiction that he just wrote, just released. It's called Secrets. And I explained before, Don, that you've been around for a long time. You've been in St. Louis for decades. For a long time, you were a TV news anchor, then a radio talk show host. And you sort of retired for a bit, and then all of a sudden started writing fiction.
Well, you know, Steve, it was the perfect time because the pandemic hit, and it was most of us were pretty much restricted to our homes. And I've always been someone who, when I get up in the morning, have to feel that I have something to do, something to accomplish that day. And so I've always liked to write, and so it was a perfect time I had all the time in the world, and just let the imagination run wild.
I totally relate to that. So it makes me think, do you do it in a pretty structured way? Like, do you pretend to have office hours, and are you that strict? Will you write between 10 and 2 o'clock every day, or how do you do it?
I was pretty much on a schedule. I didn't feel that I had to adhere to it, but every day I'd start writing at about the same time. I'd go to the gym, come home, and take a shower on most days. And then, well, depending how, if inspiration had struck, I might have to go right to work.
You did today, didn't you?
I did.
Okay.
I did. But yeah, I'd spend probably 3 or 4 hours, sometimes more. If you get in a roll, you don't pull away from it. I try to get at least 500 words a day. Often I did more than that. As I say, I write fast. I've always.
Everybody does it a little differently. I wrote a newspaper column for a while, and I had my own kind of rhythm and style to do it, and everybody's different, so I'm wondering about you. Do you like write from the beginning to the end, or would all of a sudden you'd have an idea and you'd write something and it ended up being chapter 3, and then you went back to the first? How do you work?
Well, it is interesting. There's one of them, I had an idea of how I wanted it to end, so I kind of wrote out the end first, so that everything I did leading up to that would lead to it, that I didn't go astray, so that it wouldn't match at the end. And then I cleaned it up after all of that was done. But basically, I start at the beginning. I'll make a couple of notes of ideas that I have that I want to incorporate. But for me, in my process, and I don't know what it's like with other people who write, I didn't necessarily know where I was going to go. I had an idea, and I would let characters and situations take me, and I'd go off on tangents and come back. For me, it was like I was reading the book, because I didn't know, like a reader wouldn't know, what was going to happen until I actually made it happen. And that's kind of fun, and it's interesting.
Well, I can see you changing little things. Would you ever change a lot? Would you ever write a whole chapter and not use any of it, or change the whole plot, or are they just small changes?
Mm-hmm. Most of them are small changes, but this one, the way it started, the genesis of this was, I wanted to do a kind of reversal of Agatha Christie's 10 Little Indians. It was 10 Little Indians, where people are killed one by one, until there's nobody left. And I wanted to do the reverse, have 10 people get together and plot the killing of a single person. But I just couldn't make that work. Maybe it was too many characters. I don't know. They'd have to all be different. It just didn't work. And then this skyjack thing kind of came to mind, and boom, we were off.
I just want to plug your other 2 fiction books really quickly. One was A Wink and a Nod.
A Wink and a Nod, yeah. That was this is all a learning process for me, because I haven't done it before. So I'm learning how to do this, I hope. I hope each one is a little better than the one before, better structured. A Wink and a Nod was an homage. Do you know the author John D. Mcdonald? Does that ring a bell?
No.
I'm not surprised. He wrote from the 60s to the mid-80s. He wrote, his character was Travis McGee, and he wrote 31 books over the course of about 30 years.
Wow.
About this character who lived in Florida. He wasn't a detective, but he helped people out who had problems. And he's a terrific writer. These stories were good and they were interesting, but McDonald was a wonderful writer. I read all of his books chronologically, watched him develop as an author. Anyway, and this A Wink and a Nod, my character is a guy named Tom McGee. He's a fan of John D. McDonald, so everybody called him Trav, as in Trav McGee. Anyway, so he's an old guy, he's 8 years old. His departure from an odd part-time job that he had was very much like my departure from St. Louis Public Radio.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, many people have apparently. Old news. It's
Google
old
it
news.
at home.
Yeah, it's old news. But anyway, so he's called by an old friend who helped him get through this crisis. Her husband is missing. Help me find my husband because he's been gone for a year. I think he must be dead. I can't get insurance money until we have proof that he's dead. So that's the story. He's looking for the guy. The other book is called The Damned and the Doomed.
Do you remember my joke about that? I thought you were writing about careers in broadcasting. You and I can laugh about that.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm not sure that everybody gets the joke, but broadcasting. What a world. The other book is The Damned and the Doomed. I was very happy at the Jewish Book Festival this year chose that book and me to kick off their festival, which was a big deal to me. I mean, and the reason they did largely was because much of it deals with the Holocaust. I lived in Germany for 6 years. I have a background in study in this particular area. And basically what it is it involved 2 murders in a place like Baltimore. People are not necessarily associated. A cop gets into the thing, a very patient cop, finds out that both of them were in St. Louis at the same time. And so he comes to St. Louis to find out what that was all about, what connected these guys. But they were both Germans involved in the Holocaust and concentration camps. So there's a long flashback about that and some of the characters who did not manage to survive the Holocaust. The dots get connected here in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's go back to your new one, just out, Secrets.
Yeah.
And that's available exclusively on Amazon, just so people know. But we talked about it earlier. The lead character is a guy named Gary Fergus, and he hijacked a plane.
Commercial airline, right?
Jumped out with money, got caught. They never found the money. We went to prison for most of his life. He gets out when he's in his 60s. That's kind of how Secret starts. But there are all other things happen. One thing I read in your book, this will ring a bell, a secret past, a frustrating present, and an uncertain future. Is that Gary's story?
That's Gary's story. He comes out of prison, and those are the 3 parts of his life. He's entering a new world, as I mentioned earlier, and the uncertain future, it's uncertain for a lot of reasons, but he doesn't know how well he can adapt to coming out into this new world. Plus,
he's got a record.
He's got a record, and he's got all this money, and he has to figure out how to get it and spend it.
But it doesn't seem like he's spending it in the book, or at least he's not appearing to have money to other people.
See, that's where we've got to stop with the plot, because a large portion of the book is figuring out, once he gets the money, how do I get to spend it?
Okay. There are a couple of characters, let me just throw the names out, and who come to play and have pretty big roles in the story. One's a Jacob. Is it Fishbein?
Fishbein, yeah. That's his probation and parole officer. He was paroled, Fergus was. I call him Fergus because that's the way he likes to be called. He said during all the time he was in prison, no one called him Gary. Everybody was addressed by their last name. So anyway, Fishbein was his parole officer.
And they have a lot of interactions through the story.
Well, Fergus has to report to him like every week in the beginning. And Fishbein feels that Fergus must have stashed that money someplace, and their relationship starts off with him trying to find out if in fact that was the case.
Well, Gary at one point moves in with his elderly father. And from there, some other characters sort of come in. At some point, this was funny. At some point, because you can relate to this, and I knew when it was coming from you, you knew what you were talking about. After he gets out of prison, a couple of TV news people show up on his front door.
Yeah.
And here's how you describe them, the 2 TV people, and this, I think it sort of says it. It was a frosted blonde with wavy locks and very white teeth, and a young man with spectacular hair and tight trousers.
Well,
it's all about
you recognize those?
Yeah, I think I've worked with both those people.
just turn on the evening news anyway, any place, and there they are.
You're trying to say they're shallow?
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far. We don't get into those characters too much, other than the fact that when she presents what what she reports on TV the night she gets Fergus is pretty weak. It's pretty.
And
bad.
without going into detail, because I don't want to give anything away too, a couple of women come into his life, and it's very complicated, and you wonder who's related to who, and
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, there is a woman that comes into the scene, and part of the story is his trying to determine, and she too, whether or not this woman, her name is Ruth Nixon, is his daughter or
Something else.
something else. Yeah, or his sister. She's either his daughter or his sister, and they've got to figure that out. Now, that's a dynamic you don't find too often.
And it gets even more complicated than
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But I wouldn't say it has a happy ending, or would I?
It depends. It depends. As I say, I think if you're, and I hate to even get into this, if you're one of those people that when you watch a movie about, like robbing the casino and the Ocean's 11 or something, where 7 guys go in and women, and they pull off this spectacular heist.
Right.
Sometimes you find yourself rooting for them rather than the casino, right?
Don, before you go, I just have a few seconds left, but you're already onto another project. Some sort of children's storybook?
Not a storybook, it's a series of poems for kids, and sort of motivational, inspirational, just kind of simple things for some children at a certain age. They feel that if they're the last of a string of kids, that they're not as worthy as the others. Just various things like that to make them feel their own worthiness, if that's the right way to put it.
How far are you on that one?
They're all written. I now have the all of them in the hands of an artist. They have to be accompanied by art.
Come back and talk to us about that sometime
I
when you're
surely
ready.
will.
Don Marsh, the new book is Secrets, and it's available exclusively on Amazon. Go to Amazon.com. Of course, Don has a Facebook page and Twitter, and you can
Right.
look him up in all those ways. Don, it's always great to see you, and keep writing, and I can't wait to talk to you about your next project.
Well, keep inviting me. You're very kind. You've done this in the past, and I appreciate
You'll be here.
the opportunity to talk about it.
That's Don Marsh, Secrets. I'm Steve Potter. Thanks for watching City Corner, and we'll see you next time.